All right, there's already quarterback portal drama.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me as he does every single Monday, it is the Lindsay Crosby. You can find all of his Auburn stuff over at thebarnauburn.com. Great hoodie, my
Thank
friend.
you.
It's portal season. We may sprinkle a little bit of Iron Bowl chatter, but there's just so many other things to tackle, as well as a few guys that have been reported that they are going to enter the transfer portal. The big names that were kind of piped out by national media were two quarterbacks yesterday, Lindsay, Holden Geriner, which surprises no one. And then shortly thereafter, minutes after, you see, On3's national folks saying that Hank Brown is in that same boat. And it's like, okay, like neither of those are like super shocking.
Right.
I was a little surprised at like the quickness of, the Hank Brown news. And so now, Hank goes on his Instagram story and says, hey, these reports aren't true. I had a conversation with Hank as well. And he said, like, this is really frustrating because he was notified of the report via text message from a staff member. And they're like, what's going on? It's like, yeah, I have not made my decision yet. And I want to be very clear. We're going to talk semantics on this show to some extent. The first is any player that announces you cannot enter until the 9th. And so when somebody says I am entering the portal or I'm in the portal, they're not technically in until Monday. We saw some national media members report that some folks were in the portal, and then when they were pushed on it, said, well, they can't enter until the 9th. It's like, well, let's be consistent with how we talk about this. But all in all, it sounds like Holden Geriner is definitely in. Hank, it sounds like he hasn't made his decision yet, despite what some of the national reports are.
Yeah, the most accurate way to report this, everybody, is intend to enter the portal on December 9th. And again,
which that assumption is there, but then like when you're questioned it and then you have to like add the caveat, I just don't, let's just all kind of agree that like we all understand what this means when a player is saying, hey, I'm entering the portal. They can't enter it until Monday.
Yeah. It's you're in a situation now, and you guys talked about this on the Sunday show about you're going to have to take multiple quarterbacks in the portal because the quarterbacks who played for you in 2024, obviously Payton, Thorne out of eligibility.
Correct.
Hank Brown played in 4 games. He attempted 43 passes. He is potentially leaving. He's
a maybe at this point.
He's a maybe. Yeah. Holden Geriner did not attempt a pass, but did have a decent little run on a play before the half.
Yep. He's
and
out.
Then Walker White threw 5 passes.
Yep. Got to assume he'll be back. Right.
Yeah. You assume he'll be back, but it's also not enough to say, oh yeah, that guy's definitely going to be ready if he ends up being the starter to start the year. So you're definitely in a situation now where you've lost 2, maybe you could lose 3 of your quarterbacks from your room, and you're bringing in 1. You have 1 guy committed in this class, and so you're going to have to go out and get bodies, 1, to have a starter for next season that can be a difference maker, because you didn't have that in that room this year. Yeah. And then 2, just for depth, if something were to happen, if you were to have injury strike at that position, like can happen. I remember a few years ago, Maryland started a linebacker at quarterback because they were down like 4 or 5 scholarship quarterbacks.
Yeah, you see a lot of teams in the SEC play multiple quarterbacks, and it's not by design; it's just by necessity. Whether it's a benching, Auburn started multiple quarterbacks this year because and it seems like benching Payton Thorne worked out for Payton. He was significantly better after he was sat and missed those 2 starts there for Hank. So, yeah, the current state of it is with Holden gone, you have in no particular order Hank Brown as a possibility, Walker White, and Deuce Knight. And we'll see what the thoughts are on, from the staff on Hank being the guy next year. We all know my thoughts. I don't think this staff wants to go into next year with Hank as the guy. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm not speaking for you. I'm telling you that's what the staff believes. The staff thinks they need to go out and get, a big name quarterback, which if that's on the table, Lindsay, like you can't ignore it. You have to go with that route. I mean, we've all seen what specifically has happened throughout all of college football. I mean, you look at all these contenders, they have good quarterbacks that they've added through the transfer portal. Most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them. And I mean, it's not just a one-year thing. It seems like that seems to be a normal reoccurring thing. Even when you talk about Heisman winners with Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, this is
Jalen Hurts was transferred. Yeah.
Right. So like this is how you compete in the modern age of college football. And I know so many folks want to develop a guy out of high school, and like, sure, I think that's the goal. But when you have a certain situation to pop up, and like we don't know who is going to be available via the portal, but you have to assume there are going to be good names, whether it's guys that feel like they're being pushed out, or maybe they want to take an opportunity to get more NIL money, or maybe they want to play in the SEC and they're somewhere else in kind of a smaller or lower level of competition of conference. I mean, there's a million reasons why somebody wants to leave. That applies for guys who don't play for Auburn that may enter the portal. That also applies to guys who are currently playing for Auburn that may want to enter the portal. We'll talk more about that in a second. But the quarterback situation, it was already going to be interesting. I'm surprised how quickly the portal drama, portal discussion, portal chatter about quarterbacks heated up. I mean, we wasted no time. Season ends, and then you see that report about Holden jumping in, which makes sense. Like if you're a guy who knows he's going to leave, I think you should get in as quick as possible. Say, hey, coaches, let's talk. He can't enter officially till Monday, but he still has an agent, right? And so there's still ways to get around the tampering aspect of it. So yeah, to me, like I was just kind of blown away Sunday afternoon and all this stuff happens. It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
And I think that while, yes, you want to develop a high school quarterback and make him into a starter, that is the more sustainable route. It's a very specific situation where that can happen, really. Like you have to have a guy that comes in very highly touted. He needs an opportunity to be behind somebody who is a starter, but still can get some experience, whether it's because of injury or something like that, before you can hand the reins over to that guy. Like I'm thinking about like an Arch Manning. Like that's a situation where he was able to come in behind Quinn Ewers, sit for a while. He got a little bit of play time throughout the year, including I think on Saturday he got like a touchdown run in the first quarter too. And then you're able to hand it over to that player at a certain point. And that's one of the places I'd watch. I'm not saying we know anything about this, but that's one of the places I'd watch is, does Quinn Ewers into the portal? But
can Texas hold on to both of them? Like that is interesting. In this day and age, can you hang on to two elite guys? That's interesting.
That's really tough. And if there's anybody, I guess, from a financial standpoint that doesn't necessarily have to be the guy to make money in college, it's probably Arch Manning. I feel pretty confident in saying he's probably pretty marketable and can get a pretty decent NIL package, even if he's the backup. But yeah, there's going to be situations like this at almost every single school. We've already seen reports of guys entering. And like you said, it makes sense. Get in there early, let coaches know so they can start making plans, and there's ways around the tampering. But it does also make things tougher for guys like Hugh Freeze, where you're trying to get through early signing day on Wednesday. The portal opens next Monday. But before that, you have guys already saying they're going to go in. And so you're having to close the deal with these recruits while also trying to re-recruit certain members of your roster to keep them around. And that's frustrating.
Yeah. And one of those names that we saw yesterday was reported by a friend of the program, Mike G of the War Report. And to me, how they handle this specific position group, I think is going to say a whole lot about the mentality of how much do we lean into like getting a bunch of veteran guys versus how okay are we with going more young across the board next year? Let's jump into that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, Lindsay. It doesn't matter if it's for football, basketball, baseball, concert, the theater. It doesn't matter what it is. Game Time has you covered on their free app.
Yeah, I actually am using Game Time. I bought tickets just recently for this weekend in Las Vegas to go see Garth Brooks.
How about that?
And the seats are great. The tickets were cheaper than anywhere else that I looked.
Sure.
Because that's what Game Time does. And the best part, I was able to use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off my first order.
Yep. You took my line. But that is okay. We'll just say it again. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
It's game time.
It's game time. That's right. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Mike G of the War Report put out on a post on X yesterday that Auburn tight end Micah Riley is going to be entering the transfer portal, which isn't a surprise. In fact, Lindsay, I think you a few times this year, as we've kind of done these game recaps talking about like snap counts and stuff, how that one's been something that's been a little puzzling to you. And I certainly agree, especially when towards the tail end of the season, you had an opportunity to kind of prepare for the future, because you look at Luke Deal, look at Brandon Frazier, you look at Rivaldo Fairweather, the three kind of older guys in the room. It's like, okay, well, they're not going to be here next year. You can make the argument that you needed Micah Riley and you needed more Rico Walker, which those are the two guys that are going to be on the roster right now. But if Micah Riley leaves, you look at Rico Walker, and then you look at, the two true freshmen that are going to come in. And it's like, are those guys going to be ready day one? I don't know. Ryan G may be ready as a blocker, maybe. And we'll see what Hollis is able to do from an athletic standpoint. But he strikes me more as your eventual potential like Rivaldo Fairweather replacement, just with his style of game. I think Ryan G could be more of your Luke Deal replacement.
Right.
Day one, I don't know. So to me, what's interesting about this is, with Micah entering the portal on Monday, is this a position like, do they need to get two tight ends? I mean, you could make the case for it, but that's going to be a lot of NIL. It's going to be a lot of attention. Or are you okay going younger in some positions more than others? I think that balance is going to be fascinating, not just in the tight end room, but all across the roster.
I feel like having maybe one veteran tight end would be useful. It feels like the learning curve on offense at certain positions. I'm putting tight end in that group, quarterback as well, is typically a little bit longer than it is at wide receiver and running back. And I feel like we don't see a ton of freshman tight ends really able to come in and make an impact. And so because of that, I do feel like if you are able to bring a freshman in and have him make an impact, it's going to be in situations and packages. They can get out there and they can block a dude, hit somebody pretty hard. But to be effective in the run game, to give you that safety valve for whoever your quarterback's going to be, having a veteran at tight end would be useful. And the question is, do you just go get the one guy, maybe spend a little bit more? Do you try to get two? Do you go younger, like you suggested? It feels like you need to get a guy. I think they may split the difference and get one and just hope that guy can contribute more from a pass catching perspective. Because worst case scenario, you can throw, freshmen, you can throw tight end, tackles, whatever in there as extra blockers. But it's that guy who can do both. That's the hard thing to find for a freshman. That's the hard thing to do in year one for a freshman tight end, is do both.
Yeah, and just for conversation standpoint, when you look at total snaps on offense by individual players this year, you've got your linemen and your quarterback, and then your two main receivers that lead the way with this: Dylan Wade, Connor Lew, Jeremiah Wright, Payton Thorne, KLS, Xavier Miller, Cam Coleman, then Jarquez Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that is Rivaldo, who played 530 total snaps. And there's not a clear guy where you're saying, hey, you get these snaps now. I like Rico Walker's upside. I think his hands are a little inconsistent. If you told me that his hands and his drop rate went down, I'd be like, okay, cool. I like the direction of that. But to me, in the portal, that's a very appealing situation, where you look at how Rivaldo was used and how often he was targeted, especially in the red zone. I mean, he made a lot of plays in the red zone down the stretch when Auburn's offense got a little bit better. But then you go down a few more, and you've got, some receivers and other linemen that came in, like a Braden Joyner. But Luke Deal played 287, which is actually lower than I would have guessed, if I'm being 100% honest with you.
Yeah.
But then you got Micah Riley way down, who played just 73. And then and Brandon Frazier played 3, but he had an injury. So to me, he played 3 games, 41 snaps. But there are snaps to be promised to tight ends. Now, whether you want to promise them to the young guys to help secure that class, or if you want to say, hey, like, you've got an opportunity, which is exciting, competition, but we are going to bring in a veteran. I don't know how they don't bring in at least one, but I think the argument could be made for 2, just because of how important Rivaldo Fairweather was in this offense from a snap count standpoint. And like, when he was in, they threw it. Of those 530, they threw it on 300 of those snaps. So I just take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. The flip side of that is Luke Deal was in for 287 and 172 were run plays. Like, he wasn't in there a lot. But like, here's the hard part about trying to game out next year. Rico Walker was in the game for 24 snaps this season. 17 were run plays. He was in there for 5 pass plays. He was targeted once and didn't make the catch. I have no way to know if his hands are better or not. Obviously, they have an idea from practice and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got to bring in at least one guy. And I think you split the difference with the room. You tell the guys, hey, we gave our top 2 tight ends a combined 800 snaps. We're going to bring in a veteran. He'll probably get 400 or so. But we want one of you guys or a couple of you guys to take the other ones. And if you take his snaps, great, you can win them. But you kind of split the difference. You tell the youngsters coming in, we've got 400 snaps we have to replace from you, like, between y'all, and we're going to give 400 to the veteran that we bring in. Maybe he's a 1-year guy, and after that, you're both going to play 400 a game or 400
or do they use less tight ends next year? Like, that could be fine too. I mean, we've been kind of saying, like, is Hugh Freeze's offense matching his personnel?
Do we have the receivers now where you can actually not have
Yeah,
to
you
run
probably
2
do.
tight ends?
You probably do. And I think a lot of those snaps in Rivaldo's game, like, I think you could have put a Perry there, or somebody in the slot if you wanted kind of a mismatch as far as quickness goes. I think you could have done different things with Rivaldo. Like, was Rivaldo there because he was the best tight end, or was Rivaldo there because he was a dynamic playmaker, or at least had the upside to be one, and he was a matchup problem? Like, I think you can make the case for both.
Later in the season, it felt like you went to a lot more 3 receiver, 1 tight end, 1 back sets, where you weren't using, Deal as much. You weren't using Micah Riley as much, and you were just kind of Fairweather and a couple receivers on the field. And it was almost always KLS, Cam Coleman, and Marcus Simmons. And so, yeah, it's definitely a situation here where you're like, yeah, we got to figure out how to split this up. But obviously there are snaps to go around. And I think that's the big selling point, is you can say, hey, here's the quarterback you're going to get to play with. Like, it all comes back to the quarterback. It all comes back to, it's hard to sell a guy on, we got to replace 800 tight end snaps, but we don't know who's going to be throwing to you. And this is the room we have. So it all comes back to who you get in the portal at quarterback, unfortunately.
So I want to stay on the topic of snap counts, because I think that's going to be a big deciding factor for who stays in the portal or who goes to the portal, or who, stays away from it. And I just think there's one position group where I think we could see several guys leave. I want to touch on that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Lindsay, can you imagine wagering anywhere other than our friends at FanDuel?
I absolutely would never do that. Matter of fact, I'm excited to go to Nevada this weekend just so I can log on and use FanDuel in all of its glory, because I'm in a state with legal sports betting.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm sure they got a physical book over there you could go to.
They do. I'm excited about it.
With FanDuel
Auburn
action.
basketball, baby.
Auburn basketball, yeah. As we record this Sunday evening, there's not a line yet for Auburn Duke, so hopefully they add that before Wednesday. That'd be great. But right now, you can bet on Auburn to win the national championship with plus 850 odds.
I'll do that.
You can also take them to win the SEC regular season at plus 200 or plus 165 to reach the Final Four.
Ooh.
Their odds are better to make the Final Four than to win the SEC. That should tell you, one, how good things are at Auburn, but also how good things are in the SEC. Head over to FanDuel.com right now. You can bet $5. And if you hit that $5 bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. Insane. All that is over at FanDuel.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. So on the topic of snap counts, Perry Thompson, Damari Austin, and Camden Brown, they're kind of the bottom three guys when it comes to snap counts that hit triple digits, right? Like Hank played 94 snaps in 4 games. Perry played 100 snaps in 10 games. Damari played 167 snaps in 12 games. Camden Brown played in 12 games, 179 snaps. That to me, like anybody below that line, unless they don't feel like they're a part of the future, I could see them leaving. And like, I think Camden Brown is that line for me. Where like, if Camden Brown entered the portal, would you be surprised?
I don't think so. No,
I would not be. I would not be surprised.
I mean, 179 says 78 were run plays. I mean, so, and you have to like snap count by itself doesn't necessarily give you all the entire story because he didn't even have a chance to catch a pass on half of those, just on under half of those.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Damari Austin is interesting to me because I could see him wanting to leave because he didn't get enough action this year, but the path for him being the guy is super, super clear, at least with him or Jeremiah Cobb. Jeremiah Cobb only played 82 snaps, which is weird. Would not have taken that, but that's just this is how the flow of the games went and the game plans went when it came to running the football. So Damari or Jeremiah, when you look at what they've done this year, it's a little bit different than the receivers, but because it's like, okay, well, like they've got a shot. These older guys, like the receiver calculus doesn't really make a ton of sense if you're Camden Brown, because it's like Cam Coleman and KLS were better than you. And I think they're going to add another outside receiver via the portal. And also like, they're probably going to give more chances to Perry than you. So like, I think it makes sense. Another receiver where it would totally make sense. I'm blanking on his name. Oh my goodness. Caleb Burton. Caleb Burton was like nowhere to be seen.
No.
And we kind of heard rumblings
all year in 3 games.
And we kind of heard rumblings a little bit. We didn't really talk about it, but there was some discussion in the spring window, if I remember that correctly, about could he leave? So that would be one where I would think, I can't imagine he's happy with his situation there because, if he is a slot guy, which they moved him around a little bit, last year, they put him on the inside and the outside, but you got to think they're going to give Bryce Kane more of a shot in the slot next year than him. So,
and Malcolm Simmons.
Yeah. Then like, what do you do with Sam Jackson? Like, I have no clue. What you do with Sam Jackson. Does he get a shot at that other outside spot? Is he battling with Perry if they don't add anybody? I don't know. But you just look at the receiver room, like Robert Lewis out of eligibility, KLS out of eligibility, Camden Brown, if I had to guess, he leaves. Sam Jackson, I legit don't know. I legit do not know. Caleb Burton, if I had to guess, I think he's gone. So then you've got the freshmen from this year. You've got Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Bryce Kane, and Malcolm Simmons.
At least it's a good 4 to stick with. After last season, you were in a position like this where you lost a lot of your guys, but the guys you had left weren't very good. And thankfully you brought in a great class.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, do you feel ready for Derek Smith to, who's going to sign on Wednesday? Like, do you think he can come in and contribute right away? Like maybe he's talented enough, maybe, but I don't know what you do in that situation. I don't know.
Getting the early enrollees, I think, definitely helps you believe that some of these guys can contribute. Although Malcolm Simmons showed you don't have to be an early enrollee to contribute. I believe he didn't get here till after spring, right? No,
that's right. And that's why I didn't think he was going to be a factor in the offense. And I'm glad he proved me wrong because he was great. He was absolutely great. Does he do more stuff downfield next year? Probably. Maybe. I don't know if he really needs to. But his role was definitely effective for sure. So, yeah, I mean, just how they handle the offensive roster is going to be really, you need a quarterback. I think you need a running back or two, depending on how many people stay and go. The receiving core is like, they've just got to redo that, I think. Unless some of those guys stay, like Sam Jackson may stay.
Yeah, I mean, he's already on his third. I think this is his third or fourth school. TCU, Cal here. So maybe he doesn't want to go to a fourth school. It is one more year. I could absolutely see that. And a guy who switches from quarterback to wide receiver halfway through college, that's typically not a profile the NFL is super excited to get. Maybe he's like, let's just play one more year, and then if I get a shot, great. If not, I'll go into coaching or something. I mean,
we heard good things about him in fall. It's just, I think you could hear good things about these young guys, but be like, yeah, you're not better than Cam Coleman and KLS. But now maybe he's got a shot. I don't know. But yeah, the other guys, like, I just don't see a path to them being here. So would love to be wrong. Would love for them to stick it out, but I totally don't blame them if they chose to leave. So portal season is in full effect. What was your overall take of the Iron Bowl? As we got a few minutes left here.
Frustrating. I feel like we had a blueprint on how to beat Alabama from the Oklahoma game. We had a blueprint for Auburn of how to go on the road and win. Looking at like Kentucky, what you did against Kentucky, and you took all of the worst parts of both of those games. Right? You threw the ball way more than you probably wanted to in the first half, and then you had to throw it in the second half. And so Jarquez didn't have nearly the touches we kind of wanted him to get. Now, that being said, most of his yards came on 2 carries in the second quarter. So when he did get the ball, either you telegraphed it really well when they stopped it, or they were going to stop the run no matter what. But it felt like it wasn't the best game plan, play calling that you needed to have. And a game, like in a game plan that was optimized to beat Alabama. It didn't feel like it was a game plan optimized to beat Alabama.
Yeah, and I also don't think it was a game plan to really emphasize, where there were potential mismatches. So, were there a ton of mismatches in this game? No, not in Auburn's favor. I think there were a ton of mismatches in Alabama's favor, but it just goes back to the question: if Auburn gets all of this talent, does everything get fixed? And I'm not sold that the answer to that is yes right now.
Yeah, I don't think it is, because some of those issues, I think you guys touched on this a little bit, either the post-game show or on Sunday morning on that show. But
so many shows.
Yeah, the three-man booth for calling plays. I feel like that's one of the reasons why Auburn ends up throwing more than they intend.
You think you think all three of them really are calling plays that much?
I think everybody's involved, and I think everybody kind of has a say. And I don't know if Hugh's overruling people enough. And I just think that when you have multiple people involved, they all have different ideas. You lead to a game plan that's like, what makes more sense? That the offensive genius is just awful at calling plays now, or that they told us this, that's how they're doing it, and it's a bad idea? Like, sometimes the simplest explanation is the most realistic one. The three of them are jointly calling plays. Everybody's excited to whip out their fancy, excited passing play that they have stashed in their bag for a situation. You end up throwing the ball too much.
Yeah, and if they are mostly RPOs and the right give is to pass it, like I get that conceptually, but it didn't turn into points.
Yeah, like it didn't work either way. And so you got to I know you just did a whole thing from season to season where you change the offensive staff and the play callers and all of that. But obviously it still didn't work. So you got to do something else. Yeah. And I really feel like at the end of the day, the final solution to this is just Hugh calls plays again. Because back when Hugh called plays at the other schools, that's when his offenses were the most successful. And he's been trying to ride that line here of delegating so he can recruit and all of that stuff. At a certain point, the offense doesn't score enough points. It doesn't matter how well you recruit. You'll eventually be gone.
Yeah.
And,
I think that's it.
Maybe get more help with game planning during the week so you can still recruit. And then on game day, you got to focus on calling plays because you got to score points.
Right.
End of the day, you got to score more points.
Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball, all of the Auburn baseball nugs, thebarnauburn.com. And then if you're a Braves fan, bravestoday.com with the podcast and a newsletter that's pretty gosh darn good.
Yeah, from an Auburn perspective, there may be something cooking with Lindsay on the barn side of things very soon.
Up to something season.
very soon. Be on the lookout for that. We'll announce that here as well for sure. So please like the video. Please subscribe. Go sign up at thebarnauburn.com. Post a lot of threads over there yesterday. I think you'll enjoy it. But yeah, help us get to 20,000 subs here on Locked On Auburn. Until next time, this has been Locked On Auburn.